Hi, everyone. It's Katie Miller here. I'm excited to be part of a continuation of the Developer Programs Leaders Forum with a spotlight session. So I am going to share my reflections on a chart from the Developer Program Leaders Survey that I found really interesting, as well as answer some of the questions from the forum event that happened last month. So when I went and looked at the charts, it was like, what one is really intriguing to me? The one that stuck out was DevRel practitioners spending less than half as much budget, time, or effort researching as they did strategizing. So I took a little time and reflected, like, what was so interesting about this to me? And what I found interesting is not what it says, but what it doesn't say. So, for example, how do folks differentiate the research they're doing for creating a strategy from general research? Or do they answer the developer strategy question with the assumption that research was baked into doing the strategy? And so the standalone question was more about browsing/data research, independent of focused planning work. And if not, what research is informing their planning? And if research isn't something folks are engaging with, why? Is it time? Is it cost prohibitiveness? Usefulness, a sense that research isn't custom enough, or custom research takes too long or is too resource intensive? Having the right skills themselves to dive into the research, or within the org, to apply the information to program planning. And then you see a lot of questions are coming up here, like, why is so much time spent strategizing versus doing? You know, I have a hypothesis, or maybe an assumption, that it's because we wage this constant battle for the resources to implement our strategies, along with constantly fluctuating and often conflicting goals and priorities from partner organizations that are creating this never-ending cycle of making plans, justifying plans, starting to implement plans, and then changing plans. Curious for you all who are listening in on this if this resonates with you, or am I being a little too cynical? And really at the root of all of this inquiry is when folks see this statistic, is the reaction, wow, I need to spend more time doing? Or is it actually, yeah, this feels about right. This is the right balance to get work done. What's interesting, all of this for me weaves back to the initial conundrum of strategy versus research. All of the questions above would be research questions to better inform strategy, how resources are used, what work needs to get done, and yet, would we make the time within our strategic planning to actually get the answers to these questions? And now all I can really think about, and maybe this resonates with some of you, is the book To Give a Mouse a Cookie, or the song Is There a Hole in the Bucket, Dear Liza, or the song I'm Henry VIII. Really any story or song that brings us right back to the beginning. And ultimately this cycle of we need to make a plan, we need information to make the plan, we take that time to get the information to make the plan, we make the plan, and then the plan needs to change, and we start that all over again. And so what will it actually take to break this cycle of planning so we can focus on the virtuous cycle of the developer flywheel? Ultimately, what does that come back to? Research. I'll leave you there with that. And now I'm happy to jump into some of the questions. So the first question someone asked is, how do you distinguish between developer relations versus developer marketing versus sales? It's really easy to say it depends, or they're not that distinct. And the truth is, depending on the company's developer offering, for example, if it's a platform-first company or an API offering to extend a product, where the team sits organizationally or how big the functions are, so forth, the lines can definitely blur. And truthfully, some short-term nimbleness between roles can really help products and strategies flex. Although it's not necessarily advisable long-term, as lack of clarity ultimately does affect professional growth, the ability for impact to be appreciated, burnout, and so forth. But if I do need to define them, here's how I would. I would say developer relations is the frontline subject matter experts. They're building relationships, they're building trust, more often than not without direct quota. And they're doing it through empathetic listening, feedback collection, content creation delivery, internal advocacy, and community building. Note, content includes everything from docs, samples, code labs, tutorials, product overview videos, social media, conference talks, and so forth. It doesn't mean they're not involved in sales. In fact, ideally for top customers, they should be. And it should be okay. There should be comfort referencing sales meetings and DevRel's reporting out of impact. However, I do believe that sales metrics aren't necessarily the primary goal or metric of developer relations, and that success should be measured by reach, engagement, satisfaction, and product adoption. Developer marketing. To me, developer marketing builds and manages the campaigns and programs that marry together a company's developer product offerings with developer relations activities to propel that developer flywheel, driving awareness, engagement, adoption, and trust. This can include high-touch programs from which sales can benefit, such as invitation-only technical workshops, champions networks, advisory boards, and like DevRel, should be okay acknowledging the influence on sales outcomes. However, like developer relations, sales metrics should not be the primary goal or objective of marketing. Success should be contributing to reaching developers, engaging with them, driving satisfaction, and driving adoption metrics, really defined in partnership with developer relations and the product organization. And sales sells product. They are defined by quota. If sales of developer products are done well, it recognizes the importance of individual contributor developers' buy-in in influencing sales, empathy, and trust, the importance of involving developer relations in strategic sales calls as trusted, empathetic experts, and understands the importance of partnering with marketing to execute high-touch technical programs for strategic customer accounts. All right. Moving on to the next question. When is it time to scale with more people on the developer relations team? My guidance on scaling is that when the program or programs have internal buy-in and external adoption, are secure enough to have longer-term sustainable impact. So for example, they're deemed critical to the delivery of company goals and objectives, but there are single points of failure in the execution of the programs. It's nuanced for sure. Companies cannot and should not endlessly scale. But if there's a team of 1 to 2 individuals and their departure would mean business critical work cannot get done, it's probably worthwhile considering advocating for resources. In the absence of full-time headcount, temporary vendor, contractor, agency partners can stop gaps. But in the long term can be more costly. For example, heavy investment in product training, company knowledge that is lost more quickly because they're short-term contributors. Something underlying the question though is 2 other questions. 1, what do we do in the absence of resources? And 2, how do we advocate for additional hires? For the former point, if the work is mission critical, this is where leaning into cross-functional partners and advocating for budget for agencies and contractors may come in. If it's the latter, it's really about showing the impact of work to date and the gap that is left if it isn't filled. Next question. What are some best practices for scaling developer programming with a super small team and limited resources? I think I used up my scale tips with the question above, but in a nutshell, what I would say is ruthlessly prioritize really what are the P0, P1, P2 things that have to be done to move the business forward? What are the table stakes? And if we're reflecting back on Slash Data Research, they have some incredible consistent insights year over year that highlight what those table stakes programs are for developers. Anytime I'm spinning up a new developer program or team, I always reference back to that chart because it lets you know, like, if you do nothing else, this is what developers are going to value and expect of you. The second is build really strong cross-functional relationships and find opportunities to mutually amplify work through each other's initiatives. Next, use data from proofs of concept to demonstrate the impact and opportunity to advocate for more resources. Being lean in a time of growth is not sustainable for people's productivity and well-being, and so scale and scrappiness ideally are only short-term to medium-term. Next question, how important is content syndication in your marketing plans? I'm going to answer this one super short, super sweet. Developer marketing is content syndication. Content reigns supreme. The nuance is, what content is it, for whom, with what intention, and what distribution strategy? And finally, the last question that I'm going to answer today is, if you sense a developer doesn't like to be sold to, then how do you sell to them? You know, kind of like celebrities are people too, developers are people too. Developers buy things. They are okay with buying. The product is trustworthy, useful, and worth the value. The goal is really no BS. That doesn't mean that we can't be clever and fun. Like any good marketing, it really is about knowing the audience and delivering the campaigns and programs to get them what they need in a way that resonates with their motivations and preferences. Alrighty, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my reflections, and you can find me in the DevRelX community if you want to follow up and continue the conversation.